This is the Social Factor.
We are back.
Hola.
Hello.
We are back with season 16 of the Social Factor, bullying part 2.
You're really quiet.
I'm getting there.
You don't have to be cool.
So last week David was on the phone and it was Steph and I here. This week all three of us are here.
Yeah.
Last
The snow has melted quite a bit, and we're all happy that it's warmer.
Yeah. Last week we were dealing with Blizzard Evelyn with 2 feet of snow falling, and now it's just in the process of melting very quickly.
It's so much more. Yeah,
Actually,
so much warmer.
it's still kind of slow because we got plenty of snow out there.
But it's still warmer. We had the windows open for quite a while this
morning.
morning.
Definitely. I mean, I can't complain about that.
Oh yeah, because like I said, we went to go pay the rest of the deposit on the ceremony hall, or on the chapel, and we came back. It was like, it's such a nice day out. I think I'm gonna open the windows.
It feels so good.
But then it started to get a little cold, so then we shut the windows. But hey, we let the place air out a bit. Yep. So anyway, this week we're talking about bullying again. This is gonna be part 2 of our bullying episode, and just a couple plugs. Our phone line is open if you want to call into the show. Voice your opinion.
And don't bully us while you're on the phone.
Or voice your voice your opinion or experience.
I mean, we're on the internet. How can we ask for people not to be cruel?
So the number for that is 414-949-5778. And I'll go ahead and post that in the chat window quickly. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about by the chat window, just go to Spreaker.com/thesocialfactor.
Remember to spell Spreaker.
Yep, Spreaker.com/thesocialfactor, which is SPR, which is basically speaker with an R in it. Yeah, SPREAKER.
Good.
.com.
Some people don't know.
/thesocialfactor. And when you get there, this live episode will be right there. So, what you want to do is you want to just click on the comments, and then you can just post whatever you want. Now, you do have to be a Spreaker member in order to post comments on that. But you can also send us messages on Facebook if you want to ask us questions or whatever. So I just posted the number right now, 414-949-5778 in the comments section on Spreaker. And you can also go on our Facebook page at facebook.com/thesocialfactorpodcast. So let's get into our topic. Do you want to start her off?
Well, yeah, I can. As we said before, there were some stats and stuff that we were discussing, what bullying is as far as within the school environment. I think we focus as a society a lot with what is happening in that particular environment, which is school. What I was really surprised about is, as I did more research for this episode, I was actually shocked by the fact that most of the bullying actually happens when you're an adult.
Really?
Yeah. And let me give you an example, because there's a lot of different factors involved. We all know about school bullying. It's an epidemic there. But 1 out of 4 adult Americans will experience some form of bullying in their lifetime. And there are different locations that this happens. Most of the bullying either happens within the family. Okay. The article also suggests it was in friend groups. And I can see a more dominant individual trying to keep dominant and therefore making other people feel and look bad. But it really happens in the workplace. And often you hear about these work-related shootings and workplace violence. There's a reason some of this is happening. People are literally getting bullied, and it's sometimes very severe. You have a boss that is a bully, who is not treating his employees right. You have other employees bullying, and I had it happen in the TSA, and I can talk about that a little later. But yeah, this happens a lot, and actually, it's actually worse, but it's not talked about. You understand? The adult bullying is never truly talked about. They always talk about the end result of if there's violence or a shooting, like the postal offices, or McDonald's had quite a few employees coming back with weapons and shooting former or other employees and management. So I mean, there is definitely a trend. And again, last week we really only focused on school-related bullying and, and the school shootings and stuff. So that's definitely a problem in this country. And as I said before, adult issues of bullying is not as focused upon because, number one, most people don't report it. Of fear of retaliation. Okay. One part of the article talked about a football player, a professional NFL football player, who was so harassed and hazed and physically assaulted by another NFL player that he went through the chain of command, and they didn't handle it right. Okay.
I don't think people really know how to handle it yet. A lot of times it's the same thing as it comes off in schools. You spend many hours, a lot of times a week with these people, and it's the same struggle for power, struggle for popularity.
Thank you. That is actually a definition of bullying. It's struggle for power, okay, or overpowering an individual. And often bullies have these insecurities, and so when they see that insecurity in another human being, all of a sudden they hate them. They hate that person, but really they're supposed to hate themselves. So it's a reflection, and that's a psychological aspect of bullying.
Yeah.
Is that often these people are extremely insecure, okay, and they come often from a very unhealthy background, such as was in the home itself. I mean, on this list there were like, work related, school related. Within a circle of friends, you have individuals that sometimes bully each other, and of course everybody says, "I'm just kidding," Often they don't. And then it gets into the home environment. And it said parents bullying children, and then children bullying parents. You know what? I do believe it. Sometimes that power struggle is there, as you said. And it can come back on the parent at some point. It's a horrible dynamics. And this particular individual who played professional football actually had to resign. And I don't know if he did or not, but I believe he sued the organization. Because it was a big deal. I remember this incident where they talked about this, and it took a lot of guts for him to come out like that.
Yeah.
Because nobody ever talked about man bullying.
No.
Or football players bullying each other.
It's definitely a show of weakness. You don't want to say, hey, this person's picking on me, especially if you're a man. I mean, it's pretty important for most men to seem, tough.
Well, tough or able to deal with such situations. And the problem is a majority of the time they attack an individual verbally and mentally.
Yeah.
And we talked about this last week. Physical altercations are not always done by the bullier. Sometimes it's retaliation from the person being bullied, and of course they end up in trouble.
I'm looking for these quotes from this movie because
because you can't stand just sitting here and talking without scrolling through your computer.
No,
it's related through the
I'm
the
just
subject.
teasing.
Yeah,
him. I'm teasing him.
There's this scene in 17 again where
Oh, I love that.
where Zac Efron is
Confronts a bully.
confronting the bully of his kid.
Son, yeah.
And he makes his whole speech about bullying statistics. I don't know if they're true, but I just wanted to share.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, it probably is pretty accurate because
you might have to look somewhere else, see if you can actually get a clip of it to play.
Well, I actually can't play it on air.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Okay. We're kind of losing
Yeah.
airspace. So while Josh is forward, I'll continue talking. So bullying is without a doubt a issue socially, quite honestly. And You know, if anyone's ever played in like high school football or even middle school football, there is a bit of hazing going on all the time. At least when I was in there, and these guys were very relentless when I played in football, especially in high school.
I found it like really fast.
Okay, giving me a lot of hard times because I was different, because my language capability at the time was not as good as it is today. And I was from a different country, so look at that German Nazi dude, and they would say that to me. They called me Nazis and everything, and I hated it because I wasn't.
Yeah.
And hazing is a very bad thing, but it's a form of bullying.
Yeah.
And it can be very damaging. I mean, I remember watching a classmate of mine in football, and we were good friends. And he was littler, and he was a bit heavy, And oh my God, they were relentless. It was like a pack of wolves, you know what I mean, on him constantly, and he ended up breaking down. And at one point, I got really ticked off, and I said, "Leave him alone," Then it went right back on me, and I took it because he couldn't.
Right.
He couldn't take it.
Yeah.
And it's very unfortunate. I mean, and this happens every day in schools. It happens at home, And mind you, there is physical bullying as well, and that's the fear of when you put the fear of God in a person, where you come home with a bloody nose and bruised because someone smacked you or punched you or threw you against the wall, and that's just it's a very difficult thing for a young person to deal with.
Right.
Imagine when it's an adult.
Yeah.
I had an officer whom I worked with at the TSA threaten me one day to do physical harm to me. And I instantly went into fight mode because I wasn't going to take that.
Yeah.
However, the consequences of that situation, I would have lost my job, I would have lost my apartment, and all these bad things would come from this guy starting a fight with me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so, when you're the one on the receiving end of bullying, sometimes you have to be calmer than the person bullying you.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're gonna lose stuff. You're gonna either get in trouble, or you're gonna eat it all up. Okay, and when you eat it all up, then you have other problems, physical problems, mental issues. But in this story, in this article that I read, they gave advice on how to deal with a bully when you're on the receiving end. Number one, identify it, the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Know that it's a bullying act. And then calmly, you deal with them calmly.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you get angry, then that's their fuel. Okay,
Yeah.
so when an individual is bullying someone else, they're looking for a reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
or they're trying to impress somebody else. Because that's another form of one of the categories of bullies is sometimes they have such an inferiority complex or an insecurity, they need to group, to clique. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and so they target someone that's weaker or even stronger, but the individual might not be a fighter per se, or they might not be prone to confrontation.
Right.
They might be physically stronger than that person, but that person knows, hey, he might be big, but I'm going to go after him because I know he's weak mentally.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So they go after this individual, but he's doing it for his buddies or the clique. So that's his way of being accepted by the crew. Okay?
Yeah.
And you go to any school, that's, cliques are everywhere.
Oh yeah.
High school's the worst.
There's cliques and everything. Even going back to work and everything.
Totally. You know what? When I worked for the TSA, I thought I was back in high school. And these are people protecting our country.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Oh, it was horrible. And most of them were between 30 and 50.
I don't think I've ever worked in a place where there hasn't been, okay, there's this group and this group.
Yeah.
This group
Stoners over there.
Yeah,
and
stoners over there, and this group has more power because they're
the
the
nerds
managers.
are over here. Yeah. Oh yeah, the managers. Everybody hates the managers.
I've been one for so long.
Well, I was too.
I'm gonna say a quote from this
Go for
this movie. So, you may or may not be familiar with the movie 17 again. It's with starring Matthew Perry and Zac Efron, and Zac Efron probably more so because people probably know him more a little bit because he's more of a modern actor.
Yeah, but everybody knows Friends.
Exactly, that's it. I love Friends.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I knew Matt Perry
and
more.
Stephanie does not recognize actors' names.
Yeah.
Just
Matthew
faces.
Perry's
Just faces.
Matthew
Yeah.
Perry's Chandler.
Okay. Okay.
And
I love.
you
He's a
know who
great
Zac
actor.
Efron is, so
Yeah, because you like High School Musical.
Heartthrob.
yeah.
Just because Josh likes High School Musical so much. I mean, we have like all three of them, I think.
Oh, boy.
So basically, the scene that I'm about to read is not long, but I think it really fits well into the episode. So basically, in this code is Mike, who is played by Zac Efron, who is standing up to the bully, tries to stand up to Stan, who's the bully. Stan's bullying his son Alex in the movie. So basically, Stan says, "Give me my ball back, bitch." And then Mike O'Donnell says, "You know, Stan, I feel sorry for you." And then Stan says, "You don't know me." And then Mike O'Donnell says, "Oh, but I do all too well. You're the man. Captain of the basketball team. Dates the pretty girls. High school is your kingdom. But people, Stan is a bully. Why? It'd be way too easy to say Stan preys on the weak simply because he's a dick. No. Stan here is much more complex than that. See, according to leading psychiatrists, Stan is a bully for one of three reasons.
Continue. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
1. Underneath all that male bravado, there's an insecure little girl banging on the closet door trying to get out.
I love it.
2. Like a caveman, Stan's brain is underdeveloped. Therefore, Stan is unable to use self-control, and so he acts out aggressively.
Very good. Very good.
3. Stan has a small wiener.
Now, in a high school environment, that would
And
be like
that's-
certain death.
And that's the quote right there.
I love it. You know, I remember that scene very well. I was actually watching it with my youngest, and we just busted up because, number one, we could all relate to it, because even my daughters end up being bullied. But also, there was like a moment of justice in those statements. So
Yep.
definitely can relate to that.
I haven't watched that movie in a long time, but I
Yeah.
feel like I have it.
Well, it's usually on like different like Netflix or Hulu.
Yeah.
So you should be able to find it there.
Well, talk about your daughter's experience with that.
Yeah, we
'cause
were
you were
trying
about
to go into that last time.
Yeah, last time, and then we were running out of time. So talk about that.
Well, Kayla was she was more of the prime target, and hang on, I'm getting that sensation again. Basically, what happened is you know she was at Wrightstown Elementary, and these 4 girls targeted her. So it was like a clique, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it was 5. I take it back. It was 5 girls, and like in your situation, she tried to befriend them, and they basically turned her away. And from that point on, they realized, okay, there's a target, and it escalated over a year or like over the semester, and it continued into the next year. And she did tell us. She told her mom, didn't tell me. Well, I'm getting warm, dude. All right, yeah, I'm getting a little warm.
Did you close these?
I did.
Thank you. Sorry, I apologize. Sometimes I have stomach problems, so sometimes I don't feel so good. In this case, however, I'm going to go back to the story. So Kayla, what happened is that I guess what broke the straw, the straw that broke the camel's back,
Mm-hmm.
was PE, and the girls were being very bitchy towards her. And what they did is they ended up breaking into her locker, took her clothes and put it into the showering room and got it all soaked. It was the middle of winter. Okay? And the school was aware of what was going on. And at one point, we met with them twice. And then it got worse the first time. The second time, the counselor and the principal blamed Kayla for it. So they turned it on my daughter. And that's when I flipped out. When I heard it, I went ballistic. I'm like, number one, it's your effing job to make sure this isn't happening. Mm-hmm. And when you know it's happening, take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing happened. So Carol got on the wire and called the family. The families of these daughters, of these girls. And two of them were very responsive. You know, they're like, we are so sorry, we'll take care of it. You know, one of them wouldn't even talk to us, and the other one pretty much made no big deal about it. Okay, so you're talking, out of the 5, 4 of them, 2 of them were responsive, and Kayla never had to deal with them, but the other ones, you know, nothing happened to them.
Mm-hmm.
So we left. We moved out of Wrightstown because of this. Because the school is just horrible. And if you're from Wrightstown, oh well. I'm not a
Secrets
fan.
exposed.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the Wrightstown elementary school. I don't know about the high school, but yeah, it was and then Mackenzie, because they knew there was other cliques there, and she was in a lower grade, and they knew about Kayla, so she would sometimes become not severely bullied like her sister, but people knew, you know, oh, your sister is this way. Oh, I guess you're that way too. You know, and I'll be honest with you, girls can be nasty.
Oh yeah,
They can be
I
mean.
know it.
You know, I mean, at least with boys, you know, there's this opportunity to fight back. With girls, I mean, it's all mind stuff. It's all verbal.
Girls play a lot of the mind tricks
my
and
God.
getting under what's most important to you.
Yeah.
I know I was never really bullied, but my sister got her fair deal of brunt of it. There was a new girl who moved to elementary school in 3rd grade. We went to a Lutheran school, so it was already kind of cliquey in that way that religious schools are. But the new girl came and just for some reason signaled Jen out like that.
Like radar?
Yeah. I think it finally ended when I snapped at her because she threw something at her.
So Big Sister was in charge at that point.
I had to take care of her a little bit, but I mean, I got away from a lot of it. Jen didn't, but...
Well, and that's another thing you're bringing up, is often the person being assaulted, let's call it that, whether it's verbal or physical, often have no way of protecting themselves. Because the school system, and even the law enforcement, can be a problem. Because if you make any move, my God, if you're a 1st grader and you punch another 1st grader, I've heard of cops showing up. Mm-hmm. Are you kidding me? And
it's not uncommon anymore. Because
it's ridiculous.
School liaisons and everything, just up in everything. I mean, I've never had a school where I've even known the liaison, but a couple of the people I worked with recently, they're in high school, almost seniors. They're best friends with the liaison. See them around campus all day. Something breaks out, they're right there, and the cops are there too.
True, but when an 8-year-old or a 7-year-old or a 10-year-old, if they go fist to cuff, okay, that's healthy. Mm-hmm. Okay, I mean, as long as nobody's hurt, let them work it out. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, in the old days, the United States was just like Europe for a long time. In most high schools, they had a boxing ring. Okay.
Wow.
In the old days, we're talking like from the time they had institutions like high school to, I would say, about the 1960s. Okay. They would, you know, and sometimes when there was a dispute, I was in one where we had the opportunity to fight it out, but it was in a controlled environment versus going nuts, you know.
Yeah.
Put on gloves and we went at it, you know. And if someone felt they needed to stop because, okay, I'm a loser now, that's fine, you know. And where I'm from, you shake hands afterwards. They don't do that in America.
No.
Yeah, they come back with a pistol. I lost. Damn it! I got my 9. I'm gonna shoot you right in the butt. You know, and it's unfortunate. It's like, how do you work these problems out?
I don't think anyone knows really how to solve their issues, at least in this day and age, either. Because
everybody's catered to, number one, okay? And if you cater to a bully, that's like catering to a terrorist, quite honestly. Because at some point, they're going to take over.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, the analogy is a little more extreme, but you think about it. Terrorists are bullies.
Right.
On a global level.
Right.
And they want to make us submissive. They want control over whatever group they see fit, whether it's a nation or you know, a particular area. So I'm just saying, it has a political reason why they do it, and it's usually power and control. So it's basically the definition of a bully.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna share some statistics here quick for. So we're gonna share some statistics of with
Statistics.
That's what I said.
I'm sorry, dear.
It's okay. It sounded funny.
It sounded a little funny.
What did I say? Statistics.
It's like you have a lisp all of a
It
sudden.
sounded more like statistics.
Yeah, statistics. Yeah. That's
Alright,
all right. Let's move
students
forward.
Let's not pick on Josh.
Yeah, for students with disabilities.
I'm bullying you right now.
Yeah,
So-
that's not nice either.
So, when assessing specific types of disabilities, prevalence rates differ. 35.3% of students with behavioral and emotional disorders, 33.9% of students with autism, 24.3% of students with intellectual disabilities, 20.8% of students with health impairments, and 19% of students with specific learning disabilities face high levels of bullying, victimization.
And that ties into the fact that some people bully things they don't understand.
Right.
Yeah, they look at it as a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Oh, I don't understand something, I'm going to make fun of you for it instead
Yeah.
of let's learn about it.
Exactly.
That's a very primitive way of being.
Yeah. Students with specific learning disabilities, autism, spectrum disorder, emotional and behavior disorders, other health impairments, and speech or language impairments report greater rates of victimization than their peers without disabilities longitudinally. That's a word. And their victimization remains consistent over time. Researchers discovered that students with disabilities were more worried about school safety and about being injured or harassed by other peers compared to students without a disability.
Isn't that horrible?
Mm-hmm. It really is. All people should be able to feel safe at schools.
Yep.
That should definitely be the safe spot, if not
Exactly.
anything else.
I agree.
When reporting bullying, youth in special education were told not to tattle almost twice as often as youth not in special education. Successful strategies to prevent bullying among students with disabilities include teachers and peers engaging in meaningful and appropriate social interactions, creating opportunities to increase social competence and positive interactions, and schools adopting appropriate intervention strategies that encourage social awareness and provide individualized interventions for targets with disabilities. Now, statistics for bullying of students of color. 25% of African American students, 22% of Caucasian students, 17% of Hispanic students, and 9% of Asian students report being bullied at school. More than one-third of adolescents report bias-based school bullying. Bias-based bullying, that's a tongue twister, is more strongly associated with compromised health than general bullying. Race-related bullying is significantly associated with negative emotional and physical health effects. And as far as...
So what you're saying is African American students, on average, are actually more prone to being bullied than Caucasians or white students.
Yep.
And of course it goes down. I mean, Hispanics, everybody's afraid of a Hispanic,
But-
I'm
but
kidding.
that-
That's a joke.
But that makes a lot of sense too. Like growing up, I don't think I encountered any non-white students until I reached high school, and that was just a handful of international students, and most of them were Asian.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
I've had more experience working with African Americans at work than I have at all in school.
Well, and that's the thing I noticed when I first arrived here in Wisconsin. I came from the Phoenix region, which is heavily Hispanic and African American in certain areas, and and of course Caucasian. I didn't see a lot of African Americans here when I first arrived. That didn't, you saw one or two or a few people.
And I'm sure
10 years later, a lot more.
Mhm.
And then, another 10 years go by, definitely an influx of
And it
African Americans. And
definitely depends on region and everything.
and you can
but-
tell when they had a smaller group of African Americans, people would look at them funny.
Mm-hmm.
But as they started coming in more, as they started migrating from like Chicago and Milwaukee, it became more visible.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people would stop looking like they did. I mean, being from a very diverse area myself, I would look at or talk about these individuals. I was shocked. It's like backwards at some point.
And I know I see most people overcompensate for it. I mean, the couple of African American guys I've worked with, they're basically left alone. Like, nothing they can do is wrong. They're basically untouched.
And that's wrong.
Because
That's wrong too, because they're not being held accountable for anything they're doing.
Exactly.
Because people are afraid to correct them.
Because they'll get called out for being racist. And
you're right. It's like almost a double standard. And you know what? I will say it this way. I've met people from almost every race on this planet, and each one contributes in a certain way, and there is positive and negative with every race.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, if I'm working with someone, whether they're Hispanic, Indian, Middle Eastern, European, or African American, or African, okay, once you get, I have to know them right away so I can communicate on an equal basis.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody does that. In fact, their biases is keeping them away from maybe having a good relationship with a human being.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, I too struggle with certain backgrounds of people, certain races, because of like terrorism, for instance. I really, because I worked in the environment for almost a decade, and the information that I received, sometimes you become educated by it. Okay. Yeah. And so my wife's always on me, stop doing that. They're human beings. I know they are. I'm sorry. You know, it just sometimes you go get back into your training, it's like, okay, I'm sorry, And as I said, I mean, anyone can be a threat, but anyone can be a salvation as well,
I'm going to do some statistics on LGBTQ people.
Yes.
74.1% of LGBT students were verbally bullied, for example, called names or threatened, in the past year because of their sexual orientation, and 55.2% because of their gender expression. 36.2% of LGBT students were physically bullied, for example, pushed and shoved, in the past year because of their sexual orientation, and 22.7% because of their gender. 49% of LGBT students experienced cyberbullying in the past year. Peer victimization of all youth was less likely to occur in schools with bullying policies that are inclusive of LGBTQ students. 55.5% of LGBT students feel unsafe at school because of their sexual orientation, and 37.8% because of their gender expression. 30.3% of LGBT students missed at least one entire day at school in the past month because they felt unsafe or uncomfortable, and 10.6% missed 4 or more days in the past month. For bullied LGBTQ students, and bullied students in general, if they identify one supportive adult in the school they trust, they are less likely to face adverse consequences. There are less rates of LGBTQ bullying in schools with clear bullying policies that are inclusive of LGBTQ students. Students were less likely to report having experienced homophobic bullying and report more school connectedness in schools with more supportive practices, including adequate counseling and support services for students, considering sanctions for student violations of rules, and policies on a case-by-case basis with a wide range of options, providing effective confidential support and referral services for students needing help because of substance abuse, violation, or other problems, or violence or other problems, not violation. Helping students with their helping students with their social, emotional, and behavioral problems, and provide behavior management instruction, fostering youth development, resilience, or asset promotion. I'm going to go through some bullying and suicide statistics.
Okay.
I'd like to make a comment.
You want to make a comment?
LGBT thing
okay.
First.
QRS.
LGBTQ. I'm
LGBTQ.
sorry. I don't know all the letters.
No,
yeah.
TS, I think is that being, or ST or something.
I have no
Listen,
idea.
I mean, it's a very complicated I guess in the last decade, it's a very complicated thing. And as I told you guys, I know individuals. They're my friends.
Mm-hmm.
I love them. You know, and the thing about that is, you know, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You were gonna say
That's
something.
okay. I have someone who I consider a good friend from work that is gay.
Yeah.
And he has had so much trouble getting a job anywhere else besides the company we work for because he's obviously gay. Like,
So there's discrimination even in the workplace.
they put so much, oh, we're equal opportunity employers, they put so much in front of them, but he can't even get into art school.
Does this guy's nickname have the word bread in it?
Huh?
Does this guy's nickname have the word bread in it?
No.
Okay.
No, not that coworker,
Okay.
my dear.
Okay. We shouldn't even use names. Sorry.
But that's just a nickname.
It's a
Okay.
nickname.
It's like a call sign. Okay.
Yeah.
Like Blitz. I'm Blitz. Thank
Yeah.
you.
He calls himself the Gaysian.
The gay. Gay.
The Gaysian.
He calls himself the Gaysian.
So
That's his nickname for
he's
himself.
Asian. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I got you. One thing I know, you have you have the public school systems which doesn't allow religion. Okay.
Mhm.
You have that. But then a lot of the hatred comes from people from religious families.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean, I talk to any devout Christian, and they're going to say it's a sin. Okay, so that mentality, that mindset, there are already biases for young teens or young children,
Mm-hmm.
and they go into this, and all of a sudden, now they're talking about, openly about homosexuality at school,
Mm-hmm.
and all these other categories that they have. And a lot of times, when people are uncomfortable, they create, they want to destroy it,
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And I think that's one of the angles or one of the scenarios. I mean, a bullier will go after the person that's just different,
Mm-hmm.
okay? But I think often there's that influence from religion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm gonna finish up the statistics and then we'll just talk about for the last whatever.
Sure.
So bullying and suicide, there's a strong association between bullying and suicide-related behaviors, but this relationship is often mediated by other factors including depression, violent behavior, and substance abuse. Students who bully others are bullied or witness bullying, students who bully others are bullied or witness bullying are more likely to report high levels of suicide-related behavior than students who report no involvement in bullying. A meta-analysis found that students facing peer victimization are 2.2 times more likely to have suicide ideation and 2.6 times more likely to attempt suicide than students not facing victimization. Students who are both bullied and engage in bullying behavior are the highest risk group for adverse outcomes. The false notion that suicide is a natural response to being bullied has the dangerous potential to normalize the response and thus create copycat behavior among youth. So, interventions. Bullied youth were most likely to report that actions that access support from others made a positive difference. Actions aimed at changing the behavior of the bullying youth, fighting, getting back at them, telling them to stop, etc., were rated as more likely to make things worse. Students reported that the most helpful things teachers can do are listen to the student, check in with them afterwards to see if the bullying stopped, and give the student advice. Students reported that the most harmful things teachers can do are tell the student to solve the problem themselves, tell the student that the bullying wouldn't happen if they acted differently, and ignore what was going on, or tell the student to stop tattling. As reported by students who have been bullied, the self-actions that had some of the most negative impacts, from telling the person to stop, how I feel, walking away, pretending it doesn't bother me, are often used by youth and often recommended to youth. So last section, bystanders. Students need not be the targets of bullying to experience negative outcomes. Observing bullying is associated with adverse mental health outcomes. Bystanders' beliefs in their social self-efficacy were positively associated with defending behavior and negatively associated with passive behavior from bystanders. Example, if students believe they can make a difference, they're more likely to act. Students who experience bullying report that allying and supportive actions from their peers, such as spending time with the student, talking to him or her, helping him or her get away, or giving advice, were the most helpful actions from bystanders. Students who experience bullying are more likely to find peer actions helpful than educator or self actions. And then the Youth Voice Research Project in 2010 found that victimized students reported the following bystander strategies that made things better. Spent time with me was 54%, talked to me was 51%, helped me get away was 49%, called me was 47%, gave me advice was 46%, helped me tell 44%, distracted me was 43%, listened to me was 41%, told an adult was 35%, confronted them was 29%, and asked them to stop. Those are all the statistics.
Thank you. That was very educational.
So, basically, I just want to,
you.
I want to say something, and then you guys can.
We only have a few minutes.
I know. I'll make it short. Basically, if you're bullying another person, you ain't shit.
Because a person confident would never do that.
In this day and age, parents really need to step up and really educate and tell their kids, hey, you cannot do this. It's not something where you say, well, everybody goes through this. It's just something about our society.
Right.
It's
not
not
all the parents' fault. There's very little someone can do at certain points.
Right. No. I disagree with you. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
On 2 different occasions, both my daughters were bystanders as another child was being bullied. They made the mistake of telling me and Carol, and we let them have it. We said, number one, you should be ashamed of yourself. Okay, and both girls cried. We wanted them to cry because we wanted some humility here. Okay, for them to allow, and they never did it afterwards. I think the one thing that we lack, especially in the United States, is teaching our children about respect for the elders, for your teachers, for the police officers, for law enforcement, anyone that's an adult. I mean, it doesn't mean that person can scream at you, or you have to surrender to an adult or even trust them. But when you're addressed by an adult, like there used to be the ma'am and sir. Okay, that doesn't happen anymore. They want to know our first names. Okay, so that's a cultural issue. It's a detriment to our society. So I didn't mean to go on you, but the parent is one of the greatest sources. If they know that their child is doing this, they should confront it like a hammer to a nail. And that's how we dealt with our daughters. We were so disappointed at them. We let them know. They felt like this small, and they never did it again. Unfortunately, later after that, they ended up becoming bullied, but they never did it to another human being. And that's one way to be deterred. And you're right. If you support that action and behavior, you're not helping your kids.
No.
In the long run, because then later on when they get older, there's regret.
right.
There's regret.
Yeah.
I'm sure anyone that's ever bullied somebody, once they get older, they start realizing, holy crap, because often in adult life they ended up getting bullied at the workplace.
Yeah.
So they get a taste of their own medicine, unless they're from Yale or someplace.
Right. Closing remarks from you?
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
I don't think I have any.
You don't have any?
I don't know.
Did I interfere? I'm sorry.
I don't know what I was saying.
No. You had a perspective,
No,
please.
I don't know what I was saying.
Yeah. I'm so mean. I'm a bully.
Hey, don't joke about it. We're having a serious.
No, I know, but
yeah.
I guess I intervened with her statement.
Oh, okay.
And so now I feel bad because I should have let her finish, and then I know I'm such a jerk.
Okay.
Josh,
So
it's okay.
with 45 seconds left, just want to close it out by saying, it's a real problem
It's okay.
in America these days, and people really just need to step up and not let it happen anymore. It kind of has to be like a joint effort, in my opinion, between the parents and school districts, because parents, 8 hours of that day, parents don't get to control that.
You're right.
So so that's what I mean.
But I think the better that parents do set it up, the more we can get rid of workplace bullying.
Exactly.
For adults.
Yep. That's our show for tonight. We'll be back next week with an all-new episode.
God bless.
See ya.